So the big lesson is to get in there and make sure you're really keeping tabs on what that culture is. Don't just trust everybody else or your management team to be after trying to make sure that culture is there. You need to show up.
Hey, welcome back to another HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Everett. We have good conversations with good people, and any good conversation worth having is worth having drunk. So cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Appreciate
I'm
you.
drinking honey whiskey.
Ooh, I just got an energy drink in here trying to keep me awake right now.
Yeah, that'll happen sometimes.
Fighting off a little bit of a cold, but
Whiskey helps. Hot toddy.
Yeah, there you go. Warm it up.
Mm-hmm.
Get some malt liquor going, maybe.
There you go. Do both. Have 2 drinks.
Absolutely. Well, before we get started with the show, we've got a quick little announcement, quick little recognition piece to say thank you to all of our listeners and subscribers. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, recently on YouTube, we hit 1,000 subscribers just last week, I believe. Now I don't think it shows an individual number. I think it just shows like 1,000. I don't really know what happens when you get above 1,000 because, well, you haven't been there. So thank you to everybody who has been listening and subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's not obviously possible without you guys following and liking our channel and continue to come back to our content month in and month out. So appreciate every single one of you for following along with us.
Absolutely. And we started the show to add value and give back to the industry. So enough about us, and let's get back to that. So today's show, we've got on Terri Wilkinson. She is the co-owner, co-founder of Comfort Tech down in Kelowna, British Columbia, serving the massive metropolis down there of Kelowna in the central Okanagan. I say that in jest because her market's about 150,000 people. And yet they are running a company with about 30 employees now, crushing it with her business. They're just over $5 million in revenue. So they're doing an extremely unbelievable job, really, when it comes to being incredibly efficient in their market, maximizing the market, doing the best that they can in a beautiful, beautiful area of the country. It gets incredibly hot there. Doesn't get incredibly cold, but they do have to battle the winters a little bit, but it's not quite the same as like in the prairies or something like that. So they don't deal with the extreme seasonal winters that we do in the prairies, but they are doing an incredible job there. And she really wants to encourage more women getting into the industry. And this is something that her and I did talk a little bit about when we were sitting at lunch at Epic at the EGIA event that happened in California a couple months ago, I guess it was now. But Terri was also on a panel, and that's what with some incredibly talented people. Anton Martin, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago, he was on it with her. And she just adds a ton of value to the industry, and her and her husband are running an incredible business in Kelowna. So I'm excited for the conversation today.
Oh, no doubt about it, eh? We've got Phil Canadian on. I couldn't resist.
I know, eh?
Yeah. Yo, you betcha.
Don't even say sorry, eh?
Anyways, our antics would not be possible without our lovely sponsors. We have CHIIRP, we have Elite Call, we have On Purpose Media, and in no particular order. Have you ever thought about opening your database to fill your dispatch boards with lucrative service and sales appointments? Yeah, I guess everybody. Okay. How about boosting memberships too? Yep, everybody. So enter in Elite Call, a US-based call center that does just that. So for over 20 years, their dedicated teams don't just make calls, they directly integrate appointments into your CRM and fill your dispatch boards. Don't let your competition get ahead. Give the folks over at Elite Call a call today at elitecall.net. Check them out.
Awesome. And of course, we have our friends over at CHIIRP, the ultimate automation toolbox. Capture more leads, connect instantly, and skyrocket your sales. CHIIRP integrates seamlessly into platforms like ServiceTitan and HouseCall Pro, offering automated text messages, emails, and even ringless voicemails. Boost your Google reviews and your customer loyalty with proven rehash programs. Schedule your demo today and get an exclusive 25% off over at chirp.com/HSSR and start boosting your revenue today.
Cool. Well, then guess what? If you don't have enough at bats, well, hey, you might need to look at your marketing. So enhance your online presence with On Purpose Media, your go-to home service marketing experts for everything website design, SEO, and PPC. They do stunning. We do stunning user-friendly websites, increased visibility on search engines, targeted traffic through pay-per-click ads. Check, and check. So let's turn your online presence into a lead-generating powerhouse. Visit onpurposemedia.ca today to start your digital transformation and watch your home service company thrive in the digital world.
Terri, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Awesome. So you started the business in 2005. Curious your journey into the trades. I think it was your husband that brought you into it, right? And you were managing another business at the time, and then you came in. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically that's it. Jeff's been a gas fitter and then a refrigeration mechanic for his entire adult life. I used to be in the swimming pool industry. So, kind of related, service department, maintenance department, stuff like that. But, a little different, a lot more urgency in the HVAC industry. So, yeah, I convinced Jeff that it would be a good idea to go out on his own. And I told him he wouldn't have to work as hard. And I told him that, he could make just as much money just on his own. And then, so I kind of got a little carried away with running a business. And so now here we are, like in our busiest times of year, we employ up to 30 people. And I came over from the swimming pool industry with business management knowledge. So it was a good fit. He's the brawn. We jokingly say he's the brawn because he's the guy that knows how to fix things and do things. And I'm the brain, and I do the HR and the accounting, management, stuff like that.
Got it. And so that was going to be my next question was, what is the division of roles there? How does the communication work back and forth when it comes to making decisions and things like that?
We work really hard at trying to be very definitive in what we do. So he won't tell me how to handle an employee situation, and I won't tell him how to install a heat pump. One of the things that has kept it working as a married couple is that we have very defined roles, and except for way upper level business decisions, we don't really mix into each other's areas. We try really hard to not step on each other's toes, and it's worked very well. We've been doing this for 19 years. 19 years now.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's probably been the odd hiccup here and there that probably ends in a little bit of a fight. I mean, it's just natural for it, right? But I guess, like, was it always as definitive in looking at the role separation? Because I think a lot of times, and like people see this even not just husband and wife, but business partners too, to be able to say, okay, well, this is your role, this is my role. Sometimes it didn't start with that. And did you guys learn a lot of that on the way? Or was this something that you're like, okay, we're going to start this business together. We've never actually worked together. We need to be clearly defined from the get-go.
It was pretty defined from the get-go. When we got him out, literally chucking a truck like a one-guy show, I was already doing the bookkeeping and, kind of keeping track of customers and what was going on. Because my background has been business management and service department management, that's what I did when I was in the swimming pool industry. It was a really easy fit. The hardest thing we had to deal with was getting Jeff to stop like answering customer calls. So literally to the point where I actually switched phone numbers with him once because people were calling him and then he's calling me, and I told this guy do this, and I'd be like, well, we don't have time to do, so we just put a halt to it. But it's been pretty defined from the very beginning, and it's what makes it work for us.
I love it. What was his reaction when you changed the phone number? And did you tell him before you did it?
Oh yeah. It was one of those decisions that got made intentionally. The problem was it got to the point where he's being interrupted so much while he was trying to work at his office out in the field that people were starting to complain. So I just said, enough is enough. We can't do that anymore. And he agreed wholeheartedly. And so the phone calls started coming to me, and then I would tell people I won't give out his cell phone number.
Which
No-
is right?
No
I mean,
cell number for Jeff.
right. And there's layers to be able to handle that, right? And especially if you say, well, okay, well, guess what? I'm also an owner too here. I've got to say, you're talking to. So people say, well, talk to the owner. Well, you are.
Yeah. Well, and
Right?
people wanted to call him to book their maintenance, or they wanted to call him to book an estimate, or they wanted to talk to him about when could he come out to look at. And those weren't he didn't have the schedule in his hand. There was no point in these people calling him. So we just kind of put a kibosh on that. And then we worked really hard to make sure that this wasn't Jeff Ballard Inc. You know, we made sure to name the company Comfort Tech. We didn't want it to be him only, because I knew that would be overwhelming. So, yeah.
Sure. So in the initial days of having that, when he was the point of contact for everybody, and then transitioning him out of that, what sort of a pushback did you get from the clients, and how did you overcome that?
We didn't get a lot of pushback. They just assumed he was growing, and then he'd hired a secretary, which was fine with me. You know, I didn't announce that you're talking to an owner. I just was like, yeah, no, Jeff's out in the field right now. And if you are looking to book an appointment, then he's just going to refer you back to me. So, you know, the transition for the customers wasn't a challenge. They were excited that that meant the business was growing. The people that knew me knew that then I'd transitioned from working full-time in another business to working full-time for Comfort Tech. So yeah. And then you start adding, you know, all of a sudden you need helpers, and then you need another person. So we had to have that, decisive break between the two sides of the business. So it worked really well.
Well, it allows the people to stay in their lanes and focus on what they're good at. Because if he's good in the field and you're good with customers, well, now you're not mixing that up, because and this is just oftentimes me speaking out loud, not just for your guys' situation, your circumstance. Sometimes techs just aren't the greatest with conflict in issues that may arise that require a delicate HR touch. You can't just tell somebody to pound sand, because that doesn't generally work out too well in showing up in your Google reviews.
And he could, yes, and he might. So when you're in the field and you're working really hard and you're dealing maybe with someone challenging out there, having someone else challenging, reaching out, and he doesn't have all the information at hand, that can be a really trying problem for an owner in the field. That can be really challenging for him. So
sure. In terms of conflict, I mean, you talked a little bit about the upper level business decisions are things that you guys decide together. In your day to day, you generally don't go involved with that other individual to make a decision. When you get into conflict as a husband and wife and business owner on an upper level decision, how do you go about working towards a resolution to be able to move forward?
Very carefully. So, I mean, that's just one of these situations where, you have to, it's just like navigating a marriage, really. I mean, you have to try and find out when's the best time we're going to discuss this. When's the best time to try and talk about this. Like sometimes I'll leave it for a weekend and then we'll readdress it on the ride into town on Monday morning, when I've got his captive attention, he can't get away. But I mean, sometimes those are the type of things where we have to just come to a point where we either agree to disagree, or he says, you know what, it's your end, you figure it out, or vice versa with a customer. I've learned to trust his gut instinct. There have been a lot of times when I've really pushed him to deal with the customer and he's like, nope, they're a nightmare. I don't want to quote them. I don't want to deal with them. I'm like, oh, we could really use the work. And he's always right, unfortunately, when it comes to that kind of stuff. I hate to admit it. So a big part of that is just figuring out who actually has the better the better background to make those decisions when we don't agree, and just trying to listen to each other. You know, one of the biggest problems is sometimes you'll go ahead and make a decision and not include the other person, and then people start to feel like they're being set aside. And so we try really hard not to do that. And worst case, we have a manager named Matt, and he's been with us for 6 years now, and he's terrific. And if we really have to have a tiebreaker, then we'll talk to Matt. So,
well,
and then usually I win,
right? Because depending on who the allegiances are, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like he wants somebody else, and you want this person, and well, now you got to get a like almost like a fifth person in there is chosen by the two tiebreakers. If there's,
yeah,
I mean, you can go on and on and on, spin up as many scenarios, yeah.
Yeah, as we grow, that will, there's always more decisions to be made. But again, just, when it comes to the work that's being done, the deference is usually, to Jeff. Like, I wouldn't tell him, what the leak procedures should be on a leaking air conditioner. And when it comes to human resources, he doesn't even want to deal with it. It's not his. It's just not his thing. So. It's not that bad working with your spouse, as long as you keep those things apart. And then the other thing you got to do is it can't just be always, like weekends, evenings, the drive home at the end of the day. Sometimes you just have to shut it off sometimes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, and toughest thing to be able to do with any business owner really is to shut your business brain off. Especially if it's a husband and wife and that's all you talk about. And I know my wife, we don't work in the same industry, not even close. But one of her exes, they worked in the same industry, and it was all work all the time. That's all they talked about. They didn't talk about any other thing. What sort of, safe word do you put in place, or how do you guys separate that? So that way, if somebody does start talking about work and the other person doesn't, how do you go about, I guess, letting them down softly that you don't want to talk about work? Or do you just simply say, hey, this is a work combo, let's pick it up tomorrow, I'm out?
Yeah. Honestly, both of us we'll literally say, you're stressing me out right now. I don't want to do this right now. And we just stop. Like, we've learned that lesson. We used to push, especially me. I used to really push hard because I wanted a decision. I wanted it now. And I have this sense of urgency, but you have to evaluate your spouse. Like, I can be on 24/7. He can't. He doesn't want to. It doesn't make him happy. He'd rather be outside building something or working in the garden or those types of things, and he just doesn't want to be on 24/7. So really, it's me that I have to disengage. We had a big decision to make, and I would think over the weekend, and we left it. I didn't bring it up for the entire weekend, so he could have 2.5 days of just doing his own thing. And then it got brought up on Monday. So you have to learn how to work with your spouse, just like you do in all of your relationship. You can't be on work all the time if that personality can't do that. So
it's funny. We had that exact same conversation today with our team leaders of just this idea of detaching from the situation to be able to say, okay, well, maybe let's sleep on it. Maybe let's not make a decision here. Let's maybe think on it, because as you think on it, well, guess what? You might have a different fact. And when you have a different fact that comes into mind or a different scenario, well, now your opinion might change. And it allows that time to be able to decompress from the situation actually is a healthy thing.
Well, and it removes that emotion from it as well. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and that's a huge part of it. I mean, we all think we're right. That's like a big thing, is we all think that our opinion is the correct one. We think we're right. Why can't you see it? So
I think you're wrong in that opinion.
But we'd rather be right to our own demise than wrong to our own prosperity.
Yep.
Well, we have a tendency to go that way. So,
Yep.
But we also have to consider, like I said, we have a very defined set of roles. But when we're making an upper level decision, a lot of times it affects everyone's roles, not just mine, not just his. It's something where we have to consider what the disadvantages are to him, what the disadvantages are to me, and then the pros as well. And sometimes it's more important to deal with the cons on his side, because I can handle, or sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the cons are so severe for me that we have to make a decision that takes that into effect. Right. We both have to be comfortable with the decisions we're making, or it's just not going to work.
Now, this is all really fascinating because when we were at EGIA, when you were on the panel, one of the questions that was asked was, what is the biggest mistake that you made in your business? And you said, do you remember what you said?
I'm afraid to find out
All
what
right,
I
cool.
said.
Well, good. It
Well,
was
the
Tell me,
mistake,
what did I say?
but
What
the
did I
mistake,
say
the
at the
mistake
time?
could be depending on what's going on in your own business, and it's like, oh, this one, but then you ask the next day, well,
right.
it's a different one, right? So
It's a different one,
yeah.
totally. It was in not taking action um, on realizing that there were issues in the business, but they weren't like a level 5 issue. It wasn't on fire right now. It wasn't the biggest thing. So you didn't take action on it. You didn't move forward on getting rid of it, stopping it, etc. It
Those are
was,
the things that I worry on every night. I think,
yeah,
okay, so I was supposed to get hiring ads up today. That was really important. I was supposed to finalize my advertising, my marketing for next month. That was important. And I realized that all I've done is put out fires all day and I didn't get anything. And it's like 9 o'clock at night. Like, it's not like you think of it at, at 2 and you just say, oh, I should do that. It's taking action when things need to be fixed is a huge thing, and it's really easy to ignore. Even just like, the girls reminding every day, like, did you email that customer? And I'm like, oh no, I didn't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. And then it happens again and again. It's just an email. Just get it done.
mhm.
But also, when you look at bigger things, when you see bigger problems, or when your spouse in your business is pointing out, like, this is a problem, and you're like, I don't even want to think about that, and you just keep ignoring it, and then you realize, oh, darn it, he was right. He's right a lot. Yeah.
So is that really the reason that you sent him out to get wood right now? Is you didn't want him saying something that he would be right on?
Well, no, I can tell you this kind of thing is not anything he ever wants to do.
Okay.
And so I just didn't want him barging in and out of the house with, me yelling at him to take off his dirty boots or something. I didn't want that to happen during this conversation.
That makes sense. No, I love that idea. The thought that we get caught up in the busy work and we
Mhm.
leave the most important things that we know we ought to do, but for some reason we just don't do it. We don't make the time to do it. We don't time block it.
Well, and a lot of times too, like we've gotten to a point where we've delegated a lot of tasks to other people. So just because I see something come up on our internal messaging, I don't have to jump in on that, but I do. Like, to the point, and we have really great staff that'll actually tell me, like, hey, Terri, we've got this. Like, butt out. And they're terrific that way. But yeah, sometimes you just get so caught up in the day-to-day stuff that you just don't get anything done, and then all of a sudden it's 3 months and it's still not done, and you haven't hired the person you need, or you haven't taken action on the stuff you've needed to deal with, and you're still in that same place, and then you wonder, why are we not growing? And it's because you haven't changed the pricing, or you haven't hired the people, or you haven't fixed that expensive contract that you could cancel half of it, but you just keep forgetting to do it. So
Two ways I want to go with this. Let's go with this one. The growth part of things, just because it's the most recent, and then I wanted to circle back to getting good people to tell you to butt out. I think that's a good topic that we probably get into after the random question. But the bottleneck in terms of the growth and looking at being focused too much on the busy work. And I wrote down bottleneck. I mean, how often are we our own bottlenecks in our business? And you've probably
day.
identified that, right? Every single day we're our own bottlenecks. And so if somebody's listening to this, like, oh shit, I think that's me in my business with this particular problem. What would you tell that person?
You have to, if you realize you're a bottleneck, you have to first decide whether you can delegate what your problem is. Because usually it's my problem. Like, I had all these, we had a bunch of employees last year. We had some additional phones and iPads, and this year we're not using them right now. So I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta fix that. Like, it's $100 a month or whatever the amount is. it keeps getting shuffled off. But I totally could have delegated that to one of the office staff to, contact the phone guy and find out which ones aren't in use and figure out which ones we need to cancel so that all I have to do is make one phone call. It's that kind of stuff. And then you start looking at it like, oh, when's the last time we used that review program? That review program costs us $150 a month. Why are we still paying for that when we're not using it? It's because I didn't take the time to cancel it. Well, so trying to figure out, if you're bottlenecking, you've got to figure out either how to find the time to do it, or you need to find out who is capable of doing it. And if you hire really great, competent, and capable people, they're usually better at it than you are at fixing these problems. But they're sitting there trying to help you, and you're like, oh no, I've got it. And then a month later, like, did you do that? And I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't do it. And they're like, do you want me to do it? And I'm like, no, I've got it. So
and a month later, the same conversation happens again.
Yeah. For months and months. I mean, it took me 4 months to cancel the extra phones and iPads because I couldn't find the time to do it. And it was just a little thing because it's only, so many dollars a month. But by the time you fix those problems, so I assigned one of the ladies in our office. She's a wonderful young lady named Kelsey. I adore her. She works really hard for us. She's like she's like a mini me in a way. Like she's my assistant. She knows how to remind me. She pesters the crap out of me to get things done. And she pushes me to realize that I don't have to do everything myself. Everybody needs someone like that in their business that can do that. And I have several of them. I have another amazing lady called Emily in the office. We have Taylor, we have Matt, our other manager, and then Sherry, my payables lady, who makes sure I pay everything on time. They're fabulous people. And that's who you have to hire. You have to hire people that are smarter than you in order to do well. And then your business will grow.
Do we want to get into that topic, or should we do the random question generator first and then get into that topic?
Yeah, do that first.
Random question generator first?
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
So are you the random question generator? I was going to ask, are you familiar? I'm going to say it anyways. So you get to choose question 1, 2, or 3. You don't get to know what the questions are. We're just going to list them off. But the random, and then you get to choose, and then we'll read it out. So the random question generator, though, is brought to you by On Purpose Media, where our SEO tactics are so sharp that Google uses them as a case study. That's actually a good one. I like that. So question 1, question 2, or question 3. What would you prefer?
I'm going for 3.
What is your favorite dinosaur and why?
Oh, that's not even business oriented.
No, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Okay. My favorite dinosaur is Tyrannosaurus Rex. And the reason is because you get to do the little arm thing. Sorry.
Evan, what about, I'm curious now. I would know what Evan's favorite dinosaur is.
Yes, Evan.
I mean, my first thought was Velociraptor, but I kind of like the idea of the tiny little arms. So,
yeah.
Have you ever seen Dinosaur on TikTok?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
he does everything. He does everything as if he was a T-Rex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He basically acts like a T-Rex and just like he terrorizes everything and just rips stuff apart. He did it at a trade show booth once, and security thought that like something was actually happening to him, and he's like, no, it's just for TikTok, it's fine.
I'm gonna so this is how old I am. I'm gonna have to download TikTok. I'm assuming that's something you download, like an app.
You don't.
Yes.
I don't do TikTok.
Nah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. China will just steal your data.
I have Facebook.
There you go.
And I have a marketing company that does our Facebook campaigns and Instagram.
Perfect.
That's all you need. That's all you need. TikTok is I don't have the app either. Let's put it that way. I had it, and then I said this is stupid, and I deleted it. So I'm not a TikToker. Don't.
But
use
Evan
it, so.
is clearly,
Of course.
just for the dinosaur guy.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Just for the dinosaur guy.
And the dances.
I think
dances.
Evan should start a weekly dance on the On Purpose Media TikTok and the HVAC Reveal TikTok. So write that down, content team and social media team, as you're listening to this. That is now one of our social media strategies.
Yeah, we'll assign the task
Yes.
to all of you guys. Great.
Yes.
Okay.
But you're going to be doing the dances, so there we
I
go.
was going to say, can Evan dance?
It does,
Terribly.
yeah. Left feet.
There's gyrations that happen, so that's about the extent of it.
Oh boy, that's talking about when you're 19 in the club again. So I
All
digress.
right.
Let's get her back on track. So hiring people, getting the right people in, and those people that will tell you to butt out, I think is a key thing. Obviously, they're not going to do it right off the start, but empowering your employees and your team members rather to be able to do that, to be able to own it, to be able to take that aspect of things. How do you even begin to get great team members inside of an organization?
I think so. I learned something when we were on the contractor panel, and this is something that Anton said. One of his interview questions is always, do you want to grow? How do you want to grow? I think having someone that honestly answers that question instead of trying to tell you what you think is a pretty big deal. But finding the right people, to me, is always finding someone that, would not necessarily disagree with you, but I mean, I guess that they'll actually disagree with you. That people that are open and honest about what they need and what they want with a job and what they're hoping to do over the long term can tell you a lot about whether they're that type of person that is going to help you build a business. We don't want people that just want to just do a job and go home at the end of the day. We want people that are actually excited about the company and that are excited about the idea of growing the business and have the same philosophy that you do about, how you should deal with customers, how customers should treat you. That's a big one in trying to find the right people. And I'll ask those kind of questions when we're moving forward. It's so hard to hire right now that it's harder to ask the tougher questions because you don't want to turn someone away because you ask them a tough question. They're like, oh, I want to work at that guy that's, giving me everything rather than that other person that's going to challenge me. But I want people that want to be challenged, that want to learn and want to grow and to get into different areas and be cross-trained. Those are the important things. Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Well, yeah, that's it. And I mean, a lot of moving parts in behind it. That's the essence of hiring great people. And you think in the market, 150,000 people, well, supply isn't unlimited, right? You don't have, I mean, sure, one could argue people coming in, people coming out, moving, etc. But you don't have as big of a pool as Dallas, Fort Worth, 8 million people in the Metroplex, right? I mean, now maybe somebody's not going to drive all across there, but anyways, kind of getting beside the point. When you look at that, as you're building a great organization, a great culture, and you're making sure that you ask some of those tough questions in an interview. Do you run the interviews at all, or are parts of them, or is it now somebody else that does it?
It depends on what the interviewing is for. Usually if it's for technicians, that we're trying to evaluate from a technical standpoint, then the first interview is going to be either Matt or Jeff or both of them, because they're the ones that are trying to ascertain whether that person is actually capable of doing the work that we need them to do. A lot of times with a technician, I'll be in on a second interview or at least meet them so that we can discuss whether that person is going to represent well to our demographic. You don't want to have people that don't want to deal with, I don't know, dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to have someone that's going to go into someone's home and make them feel comfortable. And so that's also a big part of the feel of what you're trying to do. When it comes to office staff, people that I'm going to train, bookkeeping, those types of roles, administrators, that's typically me. So I mean, we don't. Yeah, I mean, Jeff doesn't need to interview an office person because he doesn't. That's not his side. So
Yep. Little hack that anybody that has techs is stock them with dog treats in their van, because I had a window break in our house when we moved in. It was already broken, and so I got the local company here, and this was 3 years ago, to fix the window. I still remember the guy. He's like, "Hey, because like I had a dog and it was in our backyard," and he's like, "Yeah, that's okay. Like, bring the dog out. Does your dog like treats?" I'm like, "What dog doesn't?" Gave the dog a treat, and dog's best friend. Then I watch, and the guy, like, they're outside because they're doing it from the outside. I see the ball going. I'm like, what the heck? And I see the dog going, and the dog would bring it back,
exactly.
and he would be sitting there, and there was two of them, right? And so like he went through it every time, but all of a sudden the dog would drop the ball. He would throw the ball for the dog.
Yeah. No,
Like,
that's and you know what? I don't know about everybody else, but I have a adorable little Frenchie Boston Cross, and she just loves to meet everyone. And if someone treated her poorly, I would personally never call that company again. Because it's just, and it's such a little thing. I mean, it's the same as people being sure not to let your cat out if it's an indoor cat. Or it's just being respectful. I mean, some people want to sit and chat and talk a little bit, and or they ask you, you know, can you help me move this couch over 2 inches? You know, I want our staff to do that. I want them to be that's part of the whole customer experience that's so important. So again, if you have an interview with someone and they're very technical, but they have absolutely zero social skills, I'm not necessarily going to put them out in a front facing position with the business. We might find something else that they might be really good at. But
Do you still let Jeff and Matt decide on the culture assessment and the culture fit for the company when it's a tech that they're interviewing, or does that come back to you?
When it comes to culture fit, I mean, they don't need me for that.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just good for them to get a female perspective.
Right.
You know, like there are some people that come in and apply, and all the ladies in the office look at me after they've left, and they're like, I'd never let that guy in my house. So,
which is a great filter for hiring.
It is. So we try and bring them into the office. We try and make sure that different people in different levels get an opportunity to at least be introduced to them, just to see what people's feel is. It's a really important thing. I mean, our demographic is the people that are deciding who they're going to let in their home is typically the women or the wives, and they're in that 35 to 65 age bracket. So you need to make sure that you understand who your customer is. So the men of the house decide that they want a 80,000 BTU modulating Daikin furnace. But the women are like, yeah, but you're not buying it from that guy because I don't want him. I don't like him. Like, you can buy that furnace from these 3 different places. I don't care if they're more money. I'm the one in the house while this is being installed, and I don't want that guy in my house. So
it's a trust, and we talk about that in advertising all the time, but it's also a relevant factor inside the house too. That trust is the big one.
Yeah, and then it comes down to how do the women in the house feel about him? I mean, and how do the men feel about him? I'm not saying that men don't have feelings, but they have a tendency to be more on the technical side, where women are more like concerned about how it looks and who's going to be in the home. How they treat your pets, like all of those things are indicators that you have to consider when you're hiring people into these roles, because they're going into people's houses, they're going into their basements. They aren't going to be watched the entire time they're there. So even install teams, they have to be likable and presentable, and they have to be like cheerleaders for the business. So you got to make sure that's happening all the time. But Matt and Jeff are just as good at recognizing that as the rest of us, that they're going to be a good fit for the culture, for sure.
Is there a favorite interview question that you like to ask everybody?
Not really.
Okay.
I know that there are a lot of people that, I mean, besides the one that Anton gave me recently about, I'm going to ask everybody how they want to grow. But I think that we have a very informal interview process. It's a lot like this. where we just sit down and chat and I try and get a feel for the people. The technical side of the interview, trying to dig down into, are you capable of doing this or that? I mean, if they put on their resume that they're capable of answering phones or dispatching or doing admin or working on office programs, you have to trust that they're honest there. I don't see much of a point of trying to delve into that specifically. So no, I just try and get to know people and decide whether I think they're going to be a good fit. You can train stuff. You can't train people to get along with other people or to be a good fit with your culture. That, like, they either have it or they don't.
Right. One of the things that you mentioned very early on in the episode, you were talking about how at your peak time or your busiest season, that's when you'll get up to about 30 staff members. Is it on the technician side? Is it in the office side? Where does that number fluctuate? And then how do you do that planning heading into that season so that you can overhire and make sure that you've got the right amount of capacity coverage?
So our business is very, very cautious about trying to keep every single person that we hire, even through the low seasons. So when we're in a shoulder season, we don't lay anyone off. We try and keep everyone. But during the shoulder seasons, a lot of times, or when guys go to school and they finish their apprenticeship and they get poached, that's how you lose people. So our big focus is in keeping everyone all the time, even if there's not a lot for them to do. We try and keep everybody working all the time. So there's, I mean, we lost a number of people last year. It was a challenging time. We had a bunch of people leave at once. And so we have to look back and see, how did that happen? What did we do? And we're still trying to rehire. Losing technicians is horrible, especially good ones. Like, I mean, if you've got really good people, you don't want to lose any of them. So if you lose a producing technician, that's a big problem. So.
Yep. Well, and that's, I was just down at Any Hour last week, and phenomenal business, the way they're run, everything is fantastic. And when they look at some of their goals around recruiting and hiring, they say the number one overlooked thing is retention. Because if you have to replace someone that you lost, well, now you got to hire two people, not just one, right? So constantly looking at how can you maintain those staff members. So I'm curious on your reflection of what happened there. What were some of the lessons that you learned about retention and wanting to make sure that you implement those moving forward so that we don't have any kind of exodus from the business?
Our big lesson in that particular situation, where we lost quite a few producing technicians at once, is to keep a better eye on what's going on in your business. So we talked a lot about delegating. And that's really important, but you can't delegate so much and that you're not keeping a pulse on what's going on there. So, we got into a position where we had one bad apple per se, and they had a lot of influence, and there was a lot of water cooler talk or a lot of closed door office talk. And because Jeff and I had tried to step back, we didn't recognize that. So the big lesson is to get in there and make sure you're really keeping tabs on what that culture is. Don't just trust everybody else or your management team to be after trying to make sure that culture is there. You need to show up. You need to show up at the meetings, and you need to make sure that that people aren't kind of aligning in a way that might work against you. We have a great company, great culture, great business. We've never lost multiple people at once before. So, and it was July.
Fun.
Right.
Busiest month of the year.
Right.
So the lesson learned is that we needed to be more in touch with those employees. If we hadn't been more in touch with those employees, I don't think they would have been as easily influenced to leave when they did.
Well, and
100%.
especially when you look at the size of a business too, right? As a business gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you look at something like an any hour, $100 million per year. Okay, well, there's a series of layers that the owners are removed from the day-to-day aspect of things. But there's something that is important there about their culture as a cultured steward. So do you have the one person that is your culture advocate that has been there for the longest, that understands what you're doing, that understands everything, that has that ear, that can go to the owners? And as you grow now as a $5 million per year business, you're still in parts of that business, right? And as you grow now, that removes it, but making sure that those layers are in place, for it are important distinguishing factors depending on the size of your business.
We have a lot of people, and I think that goes to your culture. I have a lot of people in our business, even new hires, that are very, very open. We encourage open conversation. So I think when you come down to culture stewards, you need to make every single employee you have. And if you have someone in that doesn't buy into that culture, the employees will get rid of that person without your assistance. So again, I mean, you need to listen and you need to make yourself available so that those people can come to you and say, hey, Joe seems a little down, or I've been noticing this, or I've been noticing that. And they also have to trust that you aren't going to say, oh, hey, Mary came and told me. You've got to be really, really careful about how you handle those situations and figure out a way to find out what they're telling you yourself, so you can say, I noticed it. But I would say, 80% of our staff, our long-term staff, are all that culture steward. They're all over that, trying to make sure that everybody's a good fit.
Well, 100%.
They're all cheerleaders.
And that's the thing, is like the saying is one bad apple will ruin the whole lot. Well, no, the lot will actually get rid of the bad apple in this case, because they recognize that, right? It's a self-assessment. And the reality is that when you create this strong culture, those that might have slipped through the cracks on the interview process and now are part of the culture, they realize that they're not culture fits themselves by the rest of the people continuing to uphold their culture and their values and their ethics.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's what happened. And I think that's again, when we go back and look at the mistake, the root mistake where we lost people wasn't that we lost touch just with the people that left. We'd clearly lost touch with the people that were still there. With our cheerleaders, I mean, that, because otherwise we would have been better informed about what was happening.
How did you reconnect with them?
More presence, a lot of apologies. When you have a number of revenue producing people leave at once, there's a lot of people that deal with the brunt of that, not just the owners. It's not just a dollar amount. Your office staff now can't provide an appointment in a timely manner. You're not getting your maintenances done on time. Your install schedule gets backed up, or worse yet, because you don't have service technicians, your install schedule isn't filling the way it normally would. So now your installers aren't busy. There's so many repercussions to that. So there's a lot of apologizing about losing track and double checking that everybody understands that your door is open and that you're going to make yourself available, and then make yourself bloody available, because otherwise you just screwed up. Like you just screwed up.
Yeah. Well, and here's the humility that goes involved in that, is saying, hey, it's okay to say that I messed up, guys. I recognize, I realize, and now here's my words. Now here's my actions. And then you opened up your door to have them be able to come back in. And when you do that, now they've got an even greater level of respect, because now they see, okay, well, I'm just a human too, or they're just a human too, right?
Yeah. And we have lots of those conversations with team members before we hire. Like I always try and sit down with someone and say, you know what, we're not always going to get along. There's going to be something at some point that we disagree on. But just like your relationship with your family or your kids or your parents or your spouse, there's going to be glitches. It's not going to be roses all the time. So you need to make sure that people understand that you're human too, and you need to treat them that way. Like we have a relationship with our employees that isn't, us and them. It's they've agreed to do a job for us, and we've told them that we're going to do this in return, which part of it is pay, but that's not the only thing. So you need to make sure that you're doing your part. You can't expect a one-sided relationship where you've just laid out the expectations at the beginning and you don't invest in that relationship anymore. You have to invest in the relationship long term.
And continually reinvest. It's not a one-time deposit.
Nope.
Yeah, and you have to keep in touch. You have to do those touch points where you're at the service meeting or you're at the installation meeting or you're out on a job site. Like we I try to occasionally get out and get on a job site. When especially if we're doing an install or something. I think that it's something I don't do enough. We try and send our office staff out on ride-alongs so that they have a better understanding of what the technicians are doing. And it's all about trying to make sure everybody understands that, your job isn't necessarily the hardest, it's just different. And so people need to see what the other people in the company are doing so that they understand and can build a relationship based on that kind of information, not just a job description.
Key things. And I like the part when you even said, like, I'm not a field person, but I'm going to go and check out an install every now and again, because now you're visible out there, right? You learn something. You can relate to them a little more. You don't know how to install a unit, but you know what they went through when they're doing an install.
Yeah, and there's a reason that I'm not out there doing it. It's because I don't want to. I understand that job is hard. I don't want to be on a rooftop in July. I don't want to be in a crawl space with spiders. There's things I don't want to do, and there's people that are choosing to do those crappy, more difficult jobs, and you have to have a lot of respect for that. I don't like being on the phone. I'd rather text or email. But we have some really fantastic people in the office that enjoy being on the phone, and that allows me not to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you might like to do and that you have to do. You got to find the people that actually like those things that you don't like, and you got to give them kudos for doing those jobs, because crawl spaces. Yeah.
Well, and like you said at the beginning, right? It's hiring people that are better than you at those areas of the business, right? And,
that's right.
And surrounding yourself with great people.
And recognizing them for it.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. You want to give a little plug for EGIA and what that group has meant to you since that's where we met?
The EGIA has been absolutely fantastic. I'll always give them a plug. I think I gave them a couple during the contractor panel at the conference. They have been extremely supportive. There's the Contractor Connect on Facebook, where we actually get to go and ask questions and get answers. Some of the top level people at the EGIA, like Drew Cameron and Gary Alex, and others, are members of that group. So if you have a question, they'll jump in and actually answer them almost real time. Like they're very big on that group and trying to get people to connect. And who doesn't love a Facebook group where you can ask questions and get answers from all over the continent, really. So we take part, we do all of their, as much as we can, we take part in all of their video style training. When we sign up new apprentices, we get them to go through mindset training and all those types of things. We're currently thinking of signing up for some of their technician training just to see what that's about, where they actually have hands-on, well, not hands-on because it's video, but you know what I mean, like where they're actually training technicians and concepts in this industry. And of course, we take part in the next level coaching. So we meet with a coach every 2 weeks, more often if we need to, and we talk about some of the problems and obstacles, and they help point us in the wrong direction and hold us accountable for the things that we said we do that we didn't get around to. Like when we go back to what we talked about before about not getting things done. We have Daryl Yashinsky, and he's absolutely fantastic, and he loves to call me out when I haven't done what I told him I was going to do. So yeah, it's very helpful. It's a great group all round. It's not tremendously expensive compared to some of the other groups out there. And it's just great to have that backdrop. If I need an answer to a question, I go onto Contractor University and I can find the answer. And if I can't find the answer, then I go to Contractor Connect on Facebook and I ask the question and somebody says, oh, that's in Contractor University in section 9.6. And then you can go and find the answer to your questions. So
I love it. No, it's great to be able to plug into those resources and leverage your time and your opportunities, because again, when you're a small business, under $1 million, $1 million to $5 million, to have tools where you can provide training for your team as they're coming on board, where it's not always on you. And
right.
to leverage that expertise, right? That's already there.
Get people involved, and we're talking about some really big hitters in the industry that have done extremely well, and you might not intend to grow your business to the extent that Drew or Gary has, but just being able to get that next level help is a big thing. And of course, it also gives you a chance to participate in conferences and things like that, where you get to learn from people. They also have a lot of in-person workshops that you can sign up for. So depending on your membership, you can send people to these workshops, and they can get training on technician selling, or you can go to a business boot camp where you learn everything that Gary has to tell you about how to run a company, right down to how to set up your ledger so that your reporting is good. So yeah.
Well, and that's the thing about best practice groups is like, why do you need to learn how to do it yourself? Because guaranteed the issue that you're facing, somebody else has faced it and they've successfully solved it. And so you're not alone in this journey, and just reach out and ask for dang help, because people will be there to help you. And that's a good part about finding one of those groups. So love what they're doing down at the EGIA. And I threw that up there. If you want to look out and check out more, EGIA.org is their URL. They got, I think it pops up and there's like a couple different options that you have. And look, if and find the group that resonates for you. I mean, there's plenty out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be EGIA. It could be somebody else. And they all have the same fundamental principles that are out there. Business. I mean, you know this. I mean, you were in the pool industry. You went to the HVAC. Guess what? Business fundamentals in the pool industry are the same in the HVAC industry. Whoa, shocker.
They're very similar.
Right?
However, in the swimming pool industry, there is very little KPIs shared in that industry. There's very little group help. It's just not something that you can find as easily. And so I had a fantastic mentor and employer named Tim that I used to work for in the swimming pool industry. And he was just flabbergasted that there wasn't any benchmarking or available numbers or anything like you can find in this industry we're in with heating and cooling, like, dollars per employee, revenues per employee. What should your service technicians be making when they're in a full-size van? What should your install crews be doing? What should your salesmen be doing? Those kind of things were not available in that industry. So it's really cool to be in an industry where you can take your numbers and your information and put it against the best and see where you are and where you need to improve.
Well, as the saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships. So, and that's what I like. That's what I like about what's happening with a lot of great individuals inside this space, inside the HVAC space itself, and in other home service industries too. Obviously, we're in the HVAC space, so we know a lot more about that. So, I do want to say, Terri, thank you. I know we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I want to thank you for taking the time, a fellow Canadian, to chat with us about some of the success secrets to be able to run a successful HVAC business. Of course, if you guys want to check her out, they have comforttech.ca is their URL. If you want to reach out to them, it's great service at comforttech.ca. Happy to answer any questions, be able to help you guys get to your next level of success. But before we go, Evan has one final question here for you, Terri.
Terri, what is one question that you wished people would ask you more, but they don't?
Oh, that's a really big question. You could have warned me about that one.
And where's the fun in that?
I think the biggest question that I would love for people to ask is how more women can get into the HVAC industry. Whether it's as a tradesperson, an office person, working in a sheet metal fabrication shop, whatever those things are, that's the question I wish people would ask me all the time. How can my daughter get into this industry? I want the schools to ask that question too. Can you come and talk to our people about, come and talk to our kids about how to get into trades and to explain the benefits of doing so, the wages or the industry itself, the type of work that is available to them to do. I think that there's a lot of people that don't even realize that those are options for them, men or women. It doesn't matter, male or female. A lot of people are pushed towards college, which can be very expensive, as you know, and they don't see trades, and especially the HVAC trade, as an option. So yeah, I'd like people to ask me, how do I get into this?
Well, here's
how did you get there?
Here's your soapbox.
There it is. Yeah.
Here's your soapbox. If you had a message, well, but like if somebody came up and asked that question, what would you tell them? What would you say?
I would tell them just to find out everything that they can. I would tell them to connect with a business like ours and ask to go on a ride along with some of the technicians, or spend a day in the office with some of the office staff. I would get them to get in touch with people like me that want to introduce them to the industry, and we're happy to try and facilitate those kind of conversations. I want the schools to approach us, and we try and approach the schools. I mean, we're trying to find the time always to get out there and do that. But the last time we reached out to local schools, we got 3 different interested parties that wanted us to come out and meet with their students and do a presentation on how to get into trades in general, talk about women in trades, and also, the benefits of being in a trade versus going to college. I think a lot of people go to college because that's what they're supposed to do, and then they realize that it's not lucrative, or they can't find a job in the field they thought they could find a job in. Where in trades, as you guys know, you can get a long ways, especially in wages, fairly quickly if you just follow the program and get it done. So
I know my dad tried to push me to go towards the trades growing up. I'm like, no, going to business school. And kind of hindsight's always 2020. It's like, well, maybe I should have went into the trades, because you ramp up your, like, there's one benefit right there. You ramp up your income quicker. Versus somebody that's going to college, university. Now now, granted, depending on what you want to do, you want to become a doctor. Okay, you just can't go work underneath a doctor and learn how to be a doctor.
Right.
I mean, maybe you could, but there's a lot of anatomy and stuff that goes into it. But it's a reality, right? But here's the thing: is so once you go to one school and you knock it out of the park, and especially I think this is even more empowering if it's from a female going into the trade school, to be able to give that message, to be able to speak to women, and obviously men will resonate to that message as well. Once you do it once, go do it every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Continue training, participating, learning everything you can, being willing to take on more things. But yeah, I mean, the benefit of going into trades, if you're so inclined, is that you can earn money while you learn. When you go to school, there are grants and things in Canada that help pay for tuitions and things like that. There's women in trades programs that are available that also help. There's a lot of things so you're coming out of 4 years with a good income and no debt. So it's, if you're a mechanically inclined person, or if you're interested in doing those types of jobs, I'm not, but then there's still that, like, go and learn about business, and then get into a trades company. And there's a lot of things you can learn there too. So
I would even probably push back on the business side of things. I have a business degree and I run a business, and most of the things that I learned about in my business degree aren't really applicable in running the business. I mean, financials, okay, I will give that as like the one, and how to have a conversation, maybe drink a beer. And well, I mean, we're in Canada, so have a little bit of toki every now and again in university. But the idea is the financials, right? I mean, like, that's something that I learned from my business degree. But you can also go learn that elsewhere. I mean, especially today's
It's a
day and age,
weekend course.
right? It's a
Well, yeah,
weekend course to
you
understand your
can do it
financials, right?
in a 3 or 4 day boot camp with Gary Ellis,
100%.
right?
Right,
Like,
exactly,
that's
right. And so there's resources, but if I were to go work on and learn the technical aptitudes of being in the trades, well, a little bit longer than a weekend. I'm talking about running, like working on a furnace and gas and like in electrical
well,
and
that's
all that stuff. I mean, a little bit longer than a weekend course here.
well, it's forever learning,
Yes,
actually,
yes.
because with the increase in efficiencies and with the changes in technology, you know, the way that we can diagnose now. I mean, we have thermostats that'll get back to us about how a customer's furnace is operating. You know, like we can actually,
SmartAC.com.
that's there you go. So there's like, it's a forever learning thing. There's different ways to diagnose. There's different ways to deal with customers' problems. The new advent of the heat pump technology. The government's pushing towards that technology, trying to deal with people's reactions to the government trying to push that technology. There's a lot to, there's always something to learn. And so again, participate as much as you possibly can.
Exactly. And guess what? A profit and loss statement hasn't changed in 20 years. Longer. It's still the same thing. Net income is net income.
It's the same
It's
idea.
working the numbers, right? Same principle.
There's a lot of HVAC companies that don't really understand how to read one, but there's a course.
And there's lots of information out there. So Terri, thank you for getting on your soapbox there about getting people into the trades. I think it's a very powerful message that more people need to do, and getting involved in their local schools in their local area to be able to help impact that is going to be the quickest and easiest way to be able to do that, to show what it can do for somebody in their world and give them another option versus the university world. Thank you for sharing the struggles of being married to the job, working with your spouse, and making sure that it's definitive things on there. A lot of great information came out of it for a lot of great people. So thank you for opening up and sharing all those success secrets.
Thank you. It was fun to be here. I had a good time.
You're very welcome. And until next time.
Cheers.
I brought my wine.
Cheers. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.